Greetings everybody around the world. It's time once again for Ancient Aliens Radio. This is the dedicated radio show for the cast of Ancient Aliens. Here we interview authors and researchers as an ongoing investigation into the ancient alien theory. Don't forget to like us on Facebook or subscribe to the YouTube channel Ancient Aliens Radio. What a show I have for you today. It involves my favourite subject of megalithic monuments. The author's name is Hugh Newman, and his book is called Earth Grids, published by Wooden Books. His main websites are hughNewman.co.uk and megalithomania.co.uk. Hugh is not only an author, but a conference organiser, world explorer, tour host, and self-confessed megalithomaniac. As an author, he has researched the indigo child phenomenon and published a book on the subject. His most recent book, Earth Grids, has been published by Wooden Books. He's released numerous DVDs of his multimedia presentations. He has articles published in The Lay Hunter, Mindscape magazine, World Explorer magazine, The Circular, The Spiral, The Heretic, New Dawn Australia, and numerous other publications. As well as organising the Megalithomania conferences, he's spoken at events in the UK, Malta, France, Peru, Egypt, Bosnia and North America. He's appeared on the BBC TV, Sky Channel 200, Bosnian TV and the History Channel Successful Ancient Aliens. He's currently writing a book on the Wandlebury complex, which we're going to get into later on in the show. All I can say about the book is that it's packed with a plethora of information with a variety of topics surrounding Earth mysteries and ancient Earth grids. So without further delay, let's bring on our guests. Welcome, Hugh.
Thanks for having me on, James.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you, and as I say, my favourite subject today, megalithic monuments. It's something we both touch on in our careers, and for me, and I think for you too, it's become a bit of an obsession, you know, where I think looking for answers and megalithic monuments. I think my route into it, I was given the pleasure of traversing the British Isles, Ireland, England, Scotland, Wales for work, and I naturally sought out megalithic monuments in my spare time, but it was a hobby to me, and you know, I always kind of seen it as, you know, nothing to be figured out. It's just a couple of stones sitting there. We can't know anything. It's all gone. You know, this is what I was led to believe when I was growing up. But then I soon realised I found the subjects of archaeoastronomy, archaeoacoustics, geomancy, you know, and there is scientific procedures that we can go through to figure out the mystery of the ancients. But I suppose when we're going to get into that today, Hugh, tell us about your background. What was your route into megalithic monuments, earth grids, geomancy, and the earth mysteries?
It's really to do with a more modern earth mystery, that of the crop circles.
Right.
Because although I was kind of from Cambridge, I lived in Glastonbury for a long time, and I spent a lot of time in the West Country. But I got compelled by these. Basically, if you live in England, you hear about the crop circles.
Sure.
There's hundreds come every year, and many of them are obviously, you know, hoax, man-made, that kind of thing. But a lot of them aren't, and they go back several hundred, if not thousands of years. And so Wiltshire's kind of got the whole hub of this going on. When I first went down there, I was like, oh, I saw a crop circle. I've never been so excited in my life. And it kind of blew my mind. I just couldn't understand it, and it got me studying it. But what it did, it kind of pulled me into the megalithic landscape, because that whole area where they form is always near ancient sites.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the majority of them appear in that particular area of Wiltshire, but you get them everywhere. We've had them right near Wandlebury. We've had several major ones there over the years. We've had ones in Cambridgeshire going back to 1934 that have been reported.
Right.
And so there's a lot going on, and that kind of drew me into the ancient landscape, and I started looking into trying to work out what these crop circles are all about. And I realised there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. But what it did do, it got me thinking about earth energies, about the geometry of them. I went to some conferences and started reading up on it. And this was, you know, how long ago was this? Probably 15, 20, 18 years ago, something like that. And it just kind of opened up a whole other world of research and mystery that I kind of couldn't help but get drawn into and kind of magnetized into, really. And that kind of opened up the door into the megalithic sites, and realizing that many of the fundamentals of crop circles, i.e. the energies, the geomancy, the acoustic musical properties, as you mentioned, you're interested in, it kind of it just opens that door to all these different things, and they all apply to the megalithic sites. And I was originally I was just looking around England. I started really researching, looking all over the country, meeting people, talking to people about it, interviewing them, and started writing about it, doing articles and things like that. And that was kind of how it kind of drew me in, really. But then you quickly realise it's a global phenomenon. So you realise, okay, that's the rest of my life taken up. Okay.
Yeah, that's a fascinating route into that. Usually it would be people who research the megalithic monuments would maybe spill into the crop circles. You've done it the other way round, but yeah, I mean, totally fascinating. I have to say, crop circles are something I haven't really got into very much. I like to look at them, and they definitely appeal to the intellectual curiosity. They certainly do, and the mystery seekers, for sure. So you've really delved into these megalithic sites worldwide. Tell me about the energies and the secrets that you're finding, what you're unveiling, Hugh.
Well, I mean, interestingly, there's so many parallels with these crop circles.
Right.
It's kind of weird. And this, you ask about the energy. Well, this is something that it was the energy I noticed in the crop circles. I could feel it. And I learned dowsing. I got a couple of people to show me how to dowse so I could actually find these energy currents. And I'd read The Sun and the Serpent, which is a book about these two beautiful energy lines that go all the way across southern England. One of them actually goes through Wandlebury as well.
Sure. I hope to have Maria Wheatley on the show very soon.
Well, yeah, I mean, she's like an expert on all this kind of stuff. She's actually coming to our conference as well, doing a talk about her research there in May. So that's going to be exciting.
Awesome.
But yeah, and so really, I got interested in it through the crop circle, like I did most other things, really. And when you sort of trace where these energy currents go, it's often weaved through the countryside. They're not necessarily straight, They're not ley lines, which are like straight line alignments, or lays, they should be called. Or just alignments is what Alfred Watkins ended up calling them in his last book. But they're just straight line alignments, lays are, without any necessarily energy associated with them. But these energy, I kept, dowsing and finding and having a lot of people I was with had strange experiences. I heard lots of stories about people who had healing effects and even negative sort of nausea effects. And then I noticed that the similar stories and some of my own experiences and friends and others were having the same kind of energy experience there as at megalithic sites. So there must be a connection here. There's, and then when you trace these energy lines, you realize they go through megalithic sites. Like most crop circles, there's a megalithic site either side of them somewhere, however far away. Connecting with the crop circle in the middle kind of thing. So there's obviously a connection there. And then later, eventually, this book came out in 2005, John Burke and Kaj Halberg, called Seed of Knowledge, Stone of Plenty. And I've been researching for many years leading up to that, kind of thinking, we need the science. Where's the science on this? We need someone to kind of back this up, because this is fascinating stuff, but where's the clout? Where's the evidence? And they produced this book, and it was the most eye-opening book I think I've read for a decade or two. And it really opened up the whole principles of crop circles and megalithic sites, because they were part of the BLT research team, Tolbert Levengood, up in New England in America. And they actually studied crop circles scientifically. They had samples sent over, things like that. But they kept noticing that the year after a crop circle had been formed, the next spring or summer, where it was last year and where the new crop was growing, it would often grow taller and stronger in the shape of the crop circle.
Really?
As though the soil and the energy and the plants and the roots had an energetic effect happen to them, and that would increase the quality and yield of the actual crop itself.
Fascinating.
And the seeds that were there. And so they kind of applied these principles and realized this could be the same kind of energy signatures that we actually at megalithic sites, and they found that they were. And so you have to kind of, suddenly this new technology of earth energies came forth, a whole different sort of angle on it, that these ancient sites were built to enhance fertility in the crops, possibly in humans and animals and whatever, but fertility is that it's an energy. And they realized that when you place seeds or grains or stuff in megalithic sites, in some of them, most of them they tested actually, when it was then planted and grown, it actually grew quicker than controls that weren't placed at the megalithic site, and it grew better. There's often 3 times as much crop, often as much taller,
Awesome.
stronger, and frost resistant. So they discovered this ancient energy megalithic technology by studying the crop circles.
Sure.
So I find that kind of fascinating, and I've been kind of working from that perspective, along with many others, but that's a big, very strong kind of indicator of what these sites may have been used for.
Sure. I'm glad you brought up John Burke there, because I was going to ask you about him. Is John Burke with us anymore? He's gone now, is he?
Unfortunately, he died a couple of years ago.
He wasn't that old, though. Hugh.
No, he had a sort of quite serious problem, and it kind of just got him eventually. But I was fortunate enough to have a few conversations with him. He gave me advice on which technology to use and what not to use and how to do it and things like that. So I got myself a magnetometer.
Yeah.
Just a tri-field magnetometer, and I've got and obviously the dowsing helps. Yeah. Because that just gives you a quick indicator, like without any messing about. But with these magnetometers, you have to sort of sometimes sit there all day. That's what John did. Yeah. And pick up the different readings.
That's my background, you know, electrical engineering and physics and stuff like that, you know. And I liked what John Burke brought to the table. You know, he brought this new kind of research, this new kind of scientific method to the table, like, you know, and it was welcomed because it stood to him, like, and stood to the research.
I agree. Yeah, I think it's incredibly important. I think what he's done is opened the door for a lot of a lot of this has been talked about for hundreds of years for the geomancy kind of sort of philosophy and groups, and dowsers have been doing this for hundreds of years. And now they've actually got, at last, something is there. And he's left this kind of legacy, which is really powerful, and it opens the door for this Earth Energies research because it's been carried out scientifically and statistically, and just done extremely well, and on varied sites around the world. So I got a lot of respect for that book.
Yeah, sure. It's a shame he checked out early, Hugh, hey?
Yeah, it's a big shame.
No, and
he was really getting somewhere. He was taking it to another level, but then he kind of got taken. So
yeah, I think a couple of people, as you say, have just carried on the research, and that's good now because there's a team of people out there now, Hugh.
It's got to be done. It's got to be done, really. I think.
Yeah, a lot more people are rising to the challenge, and they're all doing their own little niche in it now. There's as I say, there's the acoustics of the megalithic civilization. There's the geomancy. There's earth mysteries, earth grids. You know, the archaeoastronomy. Like, these guys left us an awful lot, Hugh, to delve into.
Oh, they did. I mean, it's just an incredible amount of interesting subjects to explore. And I've got to be honest with you, it's the crop circles that got me into most of them. Maybe archaeoastronomy was the only one that wasn't really kind of connected. But like you say, it's just it's almost like they left these sites aren't just old stones being left there. You know, they're actually particularly, they kind of left the high knowledge within them if you know how to read it.
Yeah,
and it's usually energetic, or it's usually mathematical or acoustic. So these are like universal
principles,
which cannot change over time, or you know, with languages you can lose a language.
Yeah,
no one can decipher it ever again. And but with these kind of languages, they're a bit different. They're universal. They're like mathematics, geometry, acoustics as well is another one, and obviously the geomancy and the sort of working with the landscape and the local and more global kind of effects.
Sure. I just remembered that book that you were talking about. Didn't John Burke put the seeds on the top of pyramids as well? And it was not what he did, but he said some weren't active and some were, and you could tell which ones were active by the seeds and stuff and what he was doing.
Yes, he did some research. Particularly, he did it in Egypt, but he mainly did it in Mexico. There's a site called Tikal in Guatemala, in fact, just east of Mexico and south of Mexico. And there, he placed some seeds on the two main, very kind of tall pyramids in the main sort of square, the big plaza. But they were later constructions yet, but he placed the seeds there anyway. But then he also placed some seeds on the Lost World Pyramid, which is much, much older, possibly 1,000 years older.
Right.
And that could have been built by the Olmec, which kind of fascinating. It's something I've been researching for, a good 7 years or so. And so, but he noticed that when he went to plant these samples, the ones on the newer pyramids had nothing changed. The same as the controls. Whereas the one on the older pyramid had all the energy, and it was like working, and it was functioning kind of fertility generator, and so it had this whole other element to it. So he realized this in a few other places around the world, that actually the energy is usually associated with the much older sites, as though it was a much older technology. And it kind of lost that as farming systems changed and people learned how to grow it in a different way, and there was, more abundance. But when they really needed it, this is what they were using on a global scale. It's almost like something really awful happened, messed everything up, messed the soil up and the energies, and they were like multiple purposes for these megaliths, as you probably know. They were harnessing the energy, but they're also controlling it and stop it being chaotic. So they had and then they were using that energy for these various purposes.
Sure. I kind of like to think about it that, they incorporated so many of their scientific technologies into these monuments, like we mentioned, that they weren't like showing off, but they were like trying to condense as much of their know-how into these monuments, to leave them as a legacy. I think would you feel that?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think very much so. And I think that the geometry and the maths and the astronomy, the geomancy, there's multiple. These are all kind of the liberal arts. These are kind of the ancient philosophies and techniques that are taught by the druids and the pre-druids and the ancient kind of kings and wizards and things like that. And I think there's something in that, because you see the same principles on a global scale. You see the same numbers come up. You see the same connections between sites, distances between sites, angles between sites, even globally as well, not just in one country. And you start noticing that the measurement systems are even very similar. The metrology, and that fascinates me, because it means that when you start decoding it and breaking it all down, you start realizing that they knew the dimensions of the Earth very accurately. Sure. But the whole Earth, not just parts of it. And they cannot be denied unless it was just by pure chance over and over and over again, which I don't really believe. Sure. So it does suggest that they had a very kind of high understanding of what was going on. High
science and high knowledge,
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, we mentioned Earth energies there and John Burke's work, because we're talking telluric currents. That's like these very minimal DC currents that run through the Earth, and these currents cross each other, Hugh, yeah? Is this what's making these seeds grow bigger? We're talking magnetic energy?
There's a few different things, and it varies at different sites and different areas. You do get the telluric currents, and they kind of, they tend to follow the path of least resistance, as you probably know, into sites. So sites are often designed, but unless you know that in advance, you wouldn't recognize that in these sites. One example is like a dolmen, which you get many of those in Ireland, obviously. Yep. But they're all around the world. So you get somehow the energy as long as it, it's directed through the door with these stones, it bounces off all the walls and can't go upwards because there's a roof on it. It can't, so it gets trapped and builds up charge. But often these sites are built on chalky kind of ground, and so you have water running through very tight sort of pipes, natural going through the earth, and so these create electric charge on the surface as well, which is enough to kind of charge seeds. Then you have the more major kind of earth energy currents, which some people say are connected with the magnetic field, a bit like the telluric currents kind of are. And these move through the landscape like great kind of serpent currents. Some people suggest that they're actually, these telluric currents were manipulated by the ancients, actually into multiple currents into one great current. So there's a theory coming out about that. But then you also have what's called a conductivity discontinuity, where you get two types of geology meet right under where the ancient site is. And so that alone, if you have these telluric currents moving through a really magnetic kind of rock or whatever, and then it goes to a very non-magnetic rock, it will suddenly drop. Its magnetism will suddenly drop, and it will create electric charge. And right under where the site is, it will come out into the site. And if it's a dolmen, it will trap the energy in there. But it really doesn't matter. There's multiple. I think they had a general kind of understanding of these energies and will build accordingly. So I've been studying a lot in North America. So over in the New England area, New York, Boston, kind of Connecticut area, you have all the megalithic sites, chambers, dolmens, that kind of thing. And they're all working with these principles. Whereas if you go further west to Ohio and the whole kind of mound culture, they're working with mounds and geometries and things like this. And the mounds, they would lay us in a certain way to trap, to act like an orgone generator, according to Wilhelm Reich.
Yeah.
And it would kind of create a kind of charge just by the telluric currents coming up the mound, and the underground water. And they would also somehow attract lightning by being high points on the top of these mounds. And then they would have moats around them. And the lightning, when it hit the mound, would then
absorb the energy,
create this charge. And the moat of water would also get charged up. And that would become like this extremely electrified healing water, which everyone would then drink really quickly. And there's actually a report of this I found,
really,
of them doing this, which Ross Hamilton pointed me in the right direction for that, and he commented on it in his when I went and met him in when I was over in Cincinnati in Ohio.
Fascinating. Have you actually seen the program America Unearthed on the History Channel too?
I've been watching Scott Walty. I've been watching some of that. That's very interesting.
That's I hadn't been aware of the American Newgrange and the American Stonehenge in New England and that, and some of the sites there. But I hope to get Scott Walter on the show. I spoke to him, and so he's done some interesting stuff there too. But I think one of those places in New England is probably 2000 BC. I think they say on the show.
Well, I mean, America Stonehenge, which is in New Hampshire, north of Boston, kind of thing, up in the state. That used to be called Mystery Hill, but they changed it because obviously something with Stonehenge in the name is going to get more people. But they've turned it into basically a kind of quite a commercial kind of site, but it's very interesting.
Right.
They have multiple chambers and megaliths, standing stones, and there's this greater kind of these marker stones in a greater circle, which probably go almost half a mile wide maybe, which are alignments going to different parts of the year. So that's one of the reasons it's kind of been reflected as like an American Stonehenge. But I've been there a few times actually. I've been researching up that way, and there's actually a place called Pelham, I think. There's what's left of a stone circle there. There's a very powerful small beehive chamber, it's called, nearby there as well. And that whole area of New England is somewhere that I'm fascinated by. I've been there a few times researching. We actually now started doing conferences there because of this, because we can then do a few days of tours after the conference.
Sure, awesome.
We're doing one in Quincy, Massachusetts in October, and we're going to go off to all these sites afterwards, including America Stonehenge.
Yeah, so you just bring in your conference there while we're on that then, Hugh. You've got Megalithomania in the UK, but you're doing Megalithomania in New England, is that correct?
That's right, we do every May, the merry month of May, we do one in Glastonbury. We do a two-day conference. We've been doing this since 2006.
I hope to be there this year, by the way, Hugh.
Hope so, yeah, great to see you there, man. Yeah, very cool. And
the American one then?
Yeah, we do that. Yeah, and the American one we do this year. It's on the 5th and 6th of October. We do 3 days of tours after that. We actually do 5 days of tours around the one in Glastonbury. And yeah, we get all the best top people we can to come and speak, and researchers, antiquarians, archaeologists, whoever really. We don't have any kind of we don't have a kind of peer pressure thing going on. We just get all the best people, and whether it's alternative, whether it's academic, we don't care. And often we even get people coming and talking about crop circles if we feel it fits with the whole kind of megalithic thing, which obviously it does. Sure. So we kind of keep it quite open and interesting for people. Obviously it's in Glastonbury, so it has to be a little bit wacky, and it's good fun.
So just on the North American thing then, why do you think the concentration in New England? Do you think there was traversing from the British Isles? I know the megalithic civilization, you're talking Newgrange 3200 BC, Sligo possibly older than that, but but it lasted like a good 1,000 years there, maybe it descended into, I think it's like a devolution almost, but do you think some people went across on boats to 2000 BC or something?
Oh, well, without a doubt, even before then maybe. I mean, you look at some of the sites in New England, and they've done some carbon dating, like you mentioned. They did this at America's Stonehenge.
Yeah.
And they've got quite an old date, at least 2000 BC, maybe more.
Maybe
saying.
More. Right. So that's the conservative. That's the conservative value.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, and even the male culture that they think is maybe much older. So there's a lot going on there, and there's obvious connections with Ireland. I mean, it's clear as day. If you went there as an Irishman, you would see the connections.
Sure.
The megalithic kind of chambers that are kind of built into the ground. Some of them, like you get like at Tara and other places.
And solstice alignments and all. They've got all the solstices.
They're generally aligned to different aspects of the year. Yeah, so exactly like you get in Ireland and Europe and other parts of the world. They found all this runic writing. They found Ogham script. They found Irish writing. There's the whole classic voyage of St. Brendan, I think.
Yeah.
Goes quite far back. Maybe not that far back. Maybe 1,000 or so years. But he talks about kind of ending up somewhere that appears to be North America. And this is the big controversy. This is what America Unearthed on History Channel 2 is all about. This is what Scott Walter goes into, and I think he's doing a grand job actually. I actually met him, funnily enough, at a NERA conference in New England, 2008. NERA is New England Antiquities Research Association.
Sure.
Who are amazing. They preserve the sites. They have 2 conferences a year. A really nice bunch of people, and I highly recommend people to check out NERA.org, NEARA.org,
sure.
To check out what they're up to. 'Cause if anyone's interested, that's where you want to really kind of have a good look, and they can show you around. They've got all the research there, and we're connected with them. We work with them for our conference, and they help with the tours and things. But there's so much going on around New England and New York State as well. It's completely mind blowing, really.
Yeah, and it's something. I mean, I hadn't been aware of it, and I'm not sure the American public have been aware of it, and it's been kept under wraps and for a while,
There's a kind of reason for that, which is kind of annoying, and kind of weird. Is that most people just think, and even the archaeologists say this. Colonial root cellars. That's where people store their vegetables. And like you look at them and you go and visit. And you're like, well,
they want simple answers, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, you question why would they use 20-ton blocks on the roof then? If they're going to lug 20-ton blocks around to store some potatoes, I don't think so. And then why would they align them to different parts of the turning year? Why are they built upon magnetic anomalies? Why are they on Earth energy currents in a geomantic hotspot, et cetera, et cetera? And then there's been hundreds of reports of light phenomenon appearing within these chambers and above them, moving across the landscape. And so I don't think they're root cellars. No,
I don't think so either. And I think the one thing that I kind of realise is that New England is riddled with it. Riddled.
It really is, yeah. It's surprising, really. I mean, it's not like the megalithic construction isn't really the sheer size you might get in Ireland. It's maybe a fraction smaller.
Right.
You don't get anything like Newgrange there or anything like that. It's much more of the kind of lesser known sites in Ireland, probably they're kind of similar to.
Yeah.
But it's still compelling nonetheless, because like you say, they're just kind of dismissed as root cellars. And the problem with that becomes lots of them get destroyed because they're often they seem to be near roads, quite a lot of them. I think that's because they were part of the trade routes and things like this as well.
Right.
And so the road widening schemes and general construction just destroy them because they just think, it's colonial route cells. Who cares? Haven't got any historical value.
That's right.
That's the problem, really.
Have you found or discovered anything there that really hasn't been on America Unearthed, or is there anything there in terms of mounds that we don't know about in the public domain, or?
Well, I mean, you look at, on the northeast area, you get, this is the main megalithic New England, New York State area, but you head slightly further west, and go through Pennsylvania and into West Virginia, Ohio area, that whole area, and you can't help but notice the hundreds, I believe there were hundreds of thousands of mounds and geometrical earthworks stretched across the whole Mississippi, the whole middle part of America going north to south.
Right.
I mean, we're talking just Ohio alone at over 10,000. Many have been destroyed. The thing that gets me at the moment...
Is that weather destroying them, or?
Oh, no, these are humans. Mainly.
Oh, right, you've had agriculture and stuff.
Just general kind of ignorance of the settlers going over there a few hundred years ago.
Right.
And but what's been found in the mounds is what's really interesting, and this has been heavily suppressed as well. And they've basically been finding giant skeletons in them, hundreds of reports, if not thousands. And I went over there. I've been researching this for maybe 7 years since I first discovered about this, and I thought it can't be real. It must just be a joke. Well,
Yeah.
then I actually decided I want to go there and me and my girlfriend spent 6 weeks out there last year exploring all the mound culture sites, all the way from New England through Pennsylvania to right across to Ohio and Illinois, and all the way up to Wisconsin and that area as well, up on the Great Lakes, just to sort of see what we could come up with. And we just we saw as many as we could, but we saw a fraction of them. But we met up with Ross Hamilton, who's an amazing guy. He lives in Cincinnati. He's been researching this for a couple of decades now, and he's written 3 or 4 books about all the giant skeletons that have been found in the mounds. And basically, there was a race of giants in North America. Thousands, hundreds of thousands maybe. And
I've seen some of the photographs, and the Smithsonian are terrible for losing stuff, Hugh.
losing stuff in inverted commas, yeah.
Yeah. It fascinates me how much stuff they've actually lost. The most important artifacts probably known to North America,
It's unbelievable. I mean, most of these, at the moment, I wrote a blog. People can check out my blog. It's linked. It's all on hughNewman.co.uk. So
yeah.
I did this whole travel blog about my whole trip there with my girlfriend, Sheena. And
I was reading that today. It's fascinating, It's a fascinating blog you have, that travel blog.
It's such a fascinating part of the country. Ohio, people go, Ohio, what? Ancient sites, what? You go there and it's like, they're so big, some of these geometrical earthworks. They built golf courses into them.
Really?
Yeah, they're that big. They go like half a mile, some of them.
Insane.
They're like octagonal geometries. They encode different mathematical formulas. They're beautifully cut into the earth, and mounds, and these elongated mounds. There's obviously the Serpent Mound in Peebles, Ohio, which is beautiful.
Yeah, I was talking about that the other day, actually, on one of my own shows, and I kind of wonder, were they doing like ayahuasca type brews when they made the Serpent Mound, and I do have links to hallucinogenic brews and with the rock art in Ireland, and something I worked on for the Megalithic Acoustics book, Hugh. Okay. And I was trying to decide whether there was a hallucinogenic influence or an acoustics influence for the altered states of consciousness, or both. And I kind of have arrived at the conclusion that it's both, but I do think, you look at South America, they're riddled with serpents down there as well. And in Ireland, the serpentine squiggles as well, and the legends of chasing the serpents out of Ireland, I wonder, is this where they were getting their intelligence from? It's Serpent Mound certainly is attractive in that respect,
Well, I think so. I think it was very much, I think one of my, things that I kind of generally discuss in my work is that I believe most ancient cultures were a shamanic culture in one way or another. It depends on their locality and things like that and what's available there. But I think any opportunity for an altered state of consciousness, the ancients would work with that, because it's like hitting a different realm, otherworldly realm, whether it be the fairy realm, or the divine higher realm, who knows. But I think in North America, they had access to a lot of different things, and all the Native Americans, and even those that the Native Americans said came before them, like possibly the giant culture, had a high understanding of plant medicine in whatever was available in that particular area. It's something that me and Ross discussed quite a bit when I was over there, but there's not a huge amount of evidence of what was actually growing there, unless you go and talk to the traditional Native American elders who may have some knowledge about that. But it's also the energies we were talking about briefly earlier.
Sure.
Have an effect on consciousness. That's the thing. Just natural earth energies, if harnessed and manipulated in a certain way, and even naturally, just in the landscape, you can find these hotspots. Can actually create a kind of powerful altered state, almost out of body experience. Sure. And so I believe that the sites had an effect in that perspective as well, not just through ingesting plant medicines, but also and acoustics. Actually, just the energy there was purely, could be, and this is something they kind of worked with, and this is something that John Burke mentioned in his book. how this kind of energy, not only is it a fertilizing energy, it's also a consciousness altering energy. So there's multiple sort of uses for it.
Sure. Yeah, you know, and that's the thing. I think these guys just thought in different ways, you know, and maybe they were a different race as well, Hugh, where, you know, giants, bigger brains, different mental architecture, you know. Maybe these guys just thought intuitively. They thought in terms of taking just what they needed from the land and you know, not necessarily ego warriors, but, you know, just, you know, more in tune with the earth, like, you know, as a living organism.
Yeah, I believe so. I think they were kind of geomancers, really. I think they were working with the landscape, working with the energies, working with the night sky and the day sky, just to kind of, you know, realizing they were part of the greater whole. And whereas we don't really, you know, we're kind of quite disconnected, aren't we, really, when you think about it?
It's very noisy on the planet at the moment.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, I've got these bells going up at my local church just next door, and it's not interfering with the sound or anything. But yeah, it's just everything's noisy and everything's got lights. There's lights everywhere, and
we don't even see the skies anymore.
Well, that's the thing. You don't see the energies and the light phenomena in the landscape because there's so much artificial light everywhere. If you see a light moving, of course, you just assume it's a car headlight. You don't think it may be something else, like some kind of elemental kind of force. And it's the same thing with the sound, but it's the same thing with the way we build, and we just don't even think about the geomancy and the geopathic stress we may create in our environment if we don't work with it in a gentle manner. And so this is something I feel quite strongly about. I actually work, and I've got a lot of friends who are geomancers. Sean Cohen is one of my good friends, and we work on different places. Wherever we go, wherever Sean goes, really, and when I'm with him, we always try and sort of work out how the energies have been messed up and how, you know, maybe how they were, how they should be. But often a lot of sites have powerful energies and nothing will shift that. Which is quite a good thing, really. It's
fascinating, you, because, you know, you're at the other end of the megalithic spectrum from me, you know, because my route in was astronomy, and, you know, I'm applying my physical principles. You're coming at it from the geomancy end, and it's something I discovered, geomancy, and I went, you know, it's not something I'll probably get into because I have too much other stuff to do first. I'm having to work through the other end of the spectrum, but I think we could meet in the middle, you. But
yeah, for sure.
Just in the geomancy, because I come across it in Ireland, and you know, there's this famous line that, you know, when you take it from Sligo and it runs through the megalithic cemeteries. There's actually two. You could twist it a little bit, but it runs through from Sligo, Loughcrew, Tara Hill, and then into Howth and Dublin. And if you twist it another way, it hits the other megalithic cemeteries of Carrowkeel, and it'll come across and hit the two in Wales, the two passage graves in Wales as well.
Oh, in Anglesey, you mean?
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Sorry, I just played around a little bit, and it was so convoluted to me, like, you know, I just went, that's another entity. So, but there's another one, there's a place in Antrim, and if you run it down the country, it will go through, it's a couple, because I know, I just studied the passage graves, that's where I concentrated on the megalithic tombs, and there's another one runs down through Wicklow, Kilkenny, and it hits several ones on the way, several major ones as well. And they're all in straight lines, and this is the question I have for you. You know, why the straight lines? I can't make sense of it in astronomy, you see. And I'm like, I pretty much ruled out astronomy. They weren't lining star up to a star or a constellation, and then continuing that, because there wasn't a natural route. It wasn't an east-west line or a northwest-southwest or something. You know, some of these are obscure lines. You know.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think I've seen that one you're talking about. I mean, I'm just convinced that they were surveying through the landscape, and I think you'd use astronomy for that. You'd base it partly upon astronomy. You know, you wouldn't just do it just for surveying for the purpose of that. You would align things based upon the higher principles that are happening around you, the movement of the sun and the moon and the stars. And so I agree. And I think they with that knowledge and with the surveying knowledge and with the geomancy, they worked on these multiple levels. I mean, you look at Newgrange. I mean, they built that as an acoustic chamber, as you probably know. Yeah. It was designed with that in mind. It was part of the design spec. Astronomy was part of the design spec. The geomancy was part of the design spec.
Yeah.
They had all this, but they were working with this before they were built, and they kind of how they came up with it. It's just, I mean, just to build something like that today, you have to be a master architect, having studied for like 10 years to get anywhere near anything like that. And so you have to kind of, we have to admit they could have easily worked on a vaster scale across great landscapes. I mean, you find this in Ohio, like we mentioned earlier, where some of the sites are so large and they stretch over such vast areas. You have to question how they even could have done that. And then you get some of these lays which go on for miles, like the one you're mentioning. They go on for hundreds of miles, and there's stuff that goes all the way around the world. It gets a bit silly, really, when you kind of start getting into it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It does keep going, and it's always megaliths. There's always deep antiquity. It's always the older sites are more either better built or more energies at them, and it's like there was copies of them made. That's the way I like to think about it,
Yeah, it's almost like they're kind of I get a sense
slipping from the knowledge or something.
Yeah, and I think they would kind of harness from one site to the next. They would harness the natural earth energies and direct it to the next site that they were going to build, and they create this kind of network energetically as well as for practical purposes as well. So, like we said already, there seems to be multiple purposes. And I think that's what makes it so interesting. It's like we're trying to get into the headspace of our ancestors who are really our ancestors, are part of our family.
I'm glad you said that, because people ask me who were the builders. And I always say, no, you have to psychologically profile who these guys were and what they did and what they left us. You have to get into their minds, and then you can answer that question. Have you got a theory on how the ancients surveyed so accurately, No,
that's a good question. This is a tricky one, because you see the evidence of it everywhere, and then when you start back engineering it, you start seeing that they were definitely using certain types of grids. There's some researchers who say they were using isosceles triangles, which has got two sides of equal length, but any width apart, and that they could have surveyed like that. But that becomes, you start experimenting with that yourself, and you realize maybe it's too many sites that would fit in with that, without them actually designing it like that. Other people say, like Robin Heath, for instance, he suggests they were using Pythagorean triangles, like 3, 4, 5 triangles, thousands of years before Pythagoras was even born, and doing that not only within the sites, but on the greater landscape as well, between I think Arborough in England, and then there's Anglesey, the main chamber there. I can't even say that name; it's so difficult to say. And Stonehenge create a large 3, 4, 5 triangle over the greater landscape, and then you have the 5, 12, 13 triangles, which is another Pythagorean triangle, which actually marks the 4 station stones in Stonehenge. Create 3 of the 4 create that triangle.
Sure, and
then you can extend that. By exactly 2,500 times into the landscape, projecting westwards. And you've got Stonehenge as one point. Lundy Island as another point, where we actually went there in 2008 with Robin Heath, and we actually found a stone circle very close to where the point should be. Had never been recorded before. And then it goes up to the Preseli Bluestone site up in Wales, where the bluestones from Stonehenge came from. And so you this triangle was kind of like marked out to show what they were up to, or it may have been just part of the plan of how they operated and how they worked. They didn't just work on microcosm; they worked on a macrocosmic scale as well.
So we're talking geodesy is what we do today, and geomancy is what they did in their day. Yeah, is that
kind of? Yeah, I mean, geodesy is more nowadays. There's
computers and GPS, and
we can use that. We do use the GPS. I mean, thank God for Google Earth. I mean, I've got to admit, Google Earth has made it a lot easier to study the landscape, even quite close up as well. You get quite accurate results.
Yeah.
But I mean, like people like Robin Heath, they actually go out with theodolites, which he calls theoda heavies, and because they're so heavy, and gets out there and actually surveys it properly. Because I studied surveying when I was at college years ago. I started training to become an architect. I did a year of it before I moved on to other things.
Right.
I started surveying. I got a grip on it. I wasn't interested in megaliths at the time in my late teens, but it kind of got me realizing, how difficult it is and how tricky it is, even with modern equipment. So the fact that they were working somehow with it in ancient times is quite remarkable. It seems like they had some kind of technology, or they were highly psychic. There's even people have been experimenting with, did they have an understanding of astronomy so well that they could actually measure distances and time moving across the landscape with pendulums. I don't know if you know about this. This is something Alan Butler and a couple of
I actually have his book on the shelf there, Civilization 1, and
it's incredible. And so he's got an idea that they could have used pendulums to work out distance.
I quite like that idea, Hugh. I quite favour that in science. I like to see the science of something. I don't have to be totally I don't have to wait on all the science to be in before I'll make my decision. But I'd like to see something to it, and that theory's pretty good. Like they used maybe the trajectory of Venus and that maybe the origins of the Celtic cross, like it was actually a pendulum swinging, measuring the angle of Venus. Yeah,
I mean, the pendulum thing fascinates me because, again, it kind of shows multiple purposes because it was used for dowsing, obviously.
Yeah.
Something that, you probably know Michael Pointer's work. He was very interested in. And also it could have been used for time and distance measurements, and also, working out astronomical alignments. It's very strange, and it's something we don't understand. And I really want to meet up with Alan Butler and get him to show me how he did it exactly, because I think you could apply the same principles wherever you are.
Yeah.
And that would become your kind of very simple, very clever tool.
But that would explain how you could take something and you're not having to reproduce the meter stick everywhere you go. I mean, you're taking the knowledge and giving it to somebody else, and then the knowledge can spread. And that's why maybe the megalithic yard, slightly variation, but it's pretty much a standard unit of measurement.
Yeah, and it varies depending on, the swing would vary slightly depending on your latitude, because obviously the Earth's a bit oddly shaped.
Yeah.
It gets thinner, thicker, different areas. So yes, it's fascinating. I think this could have been one of the more simple kind of tools that they may have worked with for the geodesy, geodesy, to kind of work on that level. But you look at things like, this has been noted quite a while ago, like the distance, say, between Newgrange and Giza, Egypt, is exactly 1/10 of the circumference if you continue the line around the Earth, at that angle, that kind of orientation. And that is odd. Is that just pure chance? That's exactly 1/10 the planetary circumference from these 2 points. It's like, hang on a sec. And so you kind of start questioning how they could have done that, and you kind of can't work. Maybe they could have done it with a pendulum, but they have to be very smart to be able to do that. Unless they had a GPS device.
Yeah. And you mentioned in the book about Graham Hancock and when he broke out his theory about the pentagonal latitudes around the Earth. All these ancient sites are 72 degrees of an angle between each other, on the circle, this great circle around the Earth. And that convinces me, there was a global project, Hugh.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think you can't really, he was working with these numbers because they were based on precession.
Yeah.
It's like processional numbers that are encoded in lots of different ancient cultures, buildings, texts, and things like this. But the same, I don't think he mentioned this in his book. I think myself and John Martin kind of realized that these numbers also reflect, as though it's like a pentagonal geometry within the Earth.
Sure.
The same angle as you get between the different sides and things like this. And so you kind of start realizing that even precession has a pentagonal sacred geometrical, kind of something behind it, which is kind of very strange in itself. Then you start, so they were working with these geometrical principles, I think, because they're universal, and they work with time, they work with consciousness, and they work with kind of universality. The universe has these sacred geometrical laws, and and everything is kind of based upon these, constructed from that. Even like humans, in a way, if you start analyzing it from that level. And so I think this understanding came through, and I think this partly came through because it was a shamanic culture, and they were into their psychotropic plant medicines, and this is where I believe many of these insights, possibly could have came from.
Sure. Here's my theory on it. It's a bit of a link in the chain, but the Greeks wrote about the Hyperboreans, and the Hyperboreans were known to have a temple in the north, and the only thing that fits that temple in the north is Callanish Stone Temple, for 3 points of commonality with the moon, the Pleiades, and the size of the island that it's on. Thereby, that the Hyperboreans were linked with building the Callanish Stone Temple. Therefore, they were linked with the megalithic civilization. They were also known to have like a hallucinogenic brew, which is blackish brownish. Which I only just recently discovered on, and a lot of the rock art in Newgrange is indicative of entoptic phenomena that Graham Hancock would talk about, which basically chevrons, spirals, semicircles, a variety. There's like 40 different types of entoptic phenomena that you would see going into an altered state of consciousness. So, that's where my research led me, and I was like, was it psychotropics or was it acoustics that were bringing them? Because you can go into an altered state of consciousness through acoustics, but my evidence looks at it as like both, there was acoustics and psychotropics, so.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, this is Paul Devereux did a short TV program about the acoustic stuff and showed some really good footage of what they were experimenting with in Newgrange. Yeah, and they did, and all these kind of patterns came out when the vibrations were kind of recorded. So yeah, I mean, you probably know all about this, but yeah, it's just there's something going on there. We just and
I liked what I said in the book about they may have had like an incense type smoke inside the chamber, and when you seal the chamber off, the sound waves would have been visible in the air because of the smoke. The standing wave that was contained. So I think it's nice that people can see that technology in terms of layman's concepts. Where people think in mathematics, how these guys didn't leave us any writing, therefore they had no mathematics, therefore it doesn't exist, and brush it away, But, there's some good science going into these monuments at the moment, There's some good high-tech science going in,
I agree. I think we need to kind of be doing this really, because it's like, number one, they're on the verge of being destroyed. Fortunately, most of them are made of massive stones, so they're quite hard to break. Sure. And move, and so that's kind of a good thing. But there's certainly you got to question why hasn't it been looked at from these different perspectives? Why is there an academic closed door on a lot of these subjects? Mm-hmm. And to be honest with you, this is why we do the conference. We entirely set up the conference to create an open platform for these kind of questions, because it's closed off. All the good stuff, a lot of the good stuff is closed off, and it's not available. Sure. And people aren't researching it. It's only in recent years archaeoastronomy has been starting to be accepted in academia. Yeah. Alexander Thom was on that in the 50s and 60s. Yeah. That was happening back in the 20s, and it's taken this long for it to be kind of accepted as a possible thing. And that's something that kind of bugs me. And so all this stuff many of us are researching and talking about in this era, it could be a good few years before it becomes sort of mainstream and accepted. So unfortunately, and fortunately in other ways, we are on the alternative side of these subjects, but things are starting to shift, it seems.
Yeah, I think that alternative spectrum is getting closer to the mainstream. I don't think the mainstream likes it. I do think the archaeoacoustics is going to have to go the same way as the archaeoastronomy. Some people don't like it. Now, Stonehenge has been given a lot of attention, Hugh, on the archaeoacoustics. I think there's been a couple of universities got involved there, but it's these other sites too that are getting, I've just been halfway around the world. I've been to Malta as well, and I've been to the Hypogeum as well, and, acoustics are everywhere. Everywhere you find these astronomy cultures, you find the acoustics,
Yeah, the Hypogeum. I was actually in the Hypogeum with Paul Devereux and a bunch of people back in 2007.
Awesome.
doing a bunch of research with him that then got published. I mean, I was just part of this same conference. I was speaking at the same conference as him, and it was all based upon this kind of study. And I was fortunate enough to be able to go in there and hang out with all the techies doing all their thing, and it was pretty amazing. But you just start, you can just start chanting in these places, and you get interesting kind of effects and results. And I understand, according to Devereux, that much of it is related to the human voice. It's all tuned to the human voice frequencies.
The male vocal range, that chanting.
Which is odd, and very sophisticated when you think about it. So there's something going on with that. Maybe it's urging us to sing. And this is the whole singing and chanting side of it is something that I'm fascinated by as well, because there's an enchantment that the ancients were believed to have maintained within the landscape through singing. So this acoustics side of things would have been a big deal for them.
Sure.
Because it was part of maintaining enchantment through different cultures and consciousness and sites, and through all the energy lines and through all, the big geometries over the landscape. So,
I think they were synchronizing the hemispheres of the brain, Hugh. That's what I personally think. I don't know whether they knew they were doing that. I just think they knew the effects were good and their intellect went up. But I mean, if you look at yoga today and you breathe in one nostril and out through the other, you're syncing the hemispheres of the brain by physically doing it. Whereas the sound was probably doing the same thing, But again, every time you look at this, you got to think many levels of intellect above what we're thinking, That's the key thing. Okay, I want to go back to the book, Hugh, because we'll talk for hours about acoustics. I wanted to talk about the crystalline structure inside the earth and the platonic solids, because that really grabs my attention, as that's the physicist in me.
Sure thing. Yeah, I mean, this is there's different researchers that kind of pieced together this over the last few decades, really.
Quite recent. It's quite recent,
it's relatively. I mean, Plato did mention a sort of 12-sided shape of the earth, which would be a dodecahedron, if you. And then it wasn't until really maybe the 60s and 70s, where Ivan Sanderson, who's like a biologist and sort of paranormal researcher, he did a ton of research around the world based upon the Bermuda Triangle, really, and the Devil's Triangle on Japan. And he did a ton of, statistical analysis all around the world and came up with this areas where lots of strange phenomena, time anomalies, gravitational energy anomalies had happened. And there'd been reports of them happening at these sites.
Sure.
And he found that when he mapped them out, that they would actually form into a pattern around the world. And there'd be he called them the 12 devil's graveyards around the world, later named as Vial vortices, which is kind of cool. 2 of them on the North and South Pole, and then there was 10 others equally spaced, kind of around the world. And when you plot that on a map, it clearly shows an icosahedron, which is 20 triangular faces, and these points in between the faces, the vertices, is where they touch, kind of would have touched. If you put the icosahedron in the Earth at the North and South Pole, oriented, the points, this is where they would all come out of the surface or touch the surface. So that's what it was kind of based on. He didn't even know really what he'd found. He just knew it was really interesting. It was really later that it became known as the kind of a geometry, like a physical kind of energetic, platonic solid within the Earth. A bunch of Russian scientists didn't really know about Ivan Sanderson's work, but they were doing similar stuff. And this is like part of the Academy of Sciences in Russia. This was an official document, paper, and all this kind of stuff. And they were saying that the Earth was once a great crystal, and they believe the center of the Earth is actually a crystal. It sounds kind of new age now, but the scientists in Russia would seriously, contemplating this. And through the thousands, millions of years of spin, the Earth, all the stuff had formed around it, and there was an energetic signature which could still be detected on Earth in the shape of a dodecahedron.
Sure.
Which kind of actually is like the opposite. It's the it nests with an icosahedron. It's like the opposite. Yes. And they kind of nest together. The points touch the middle of the faces of the other geometry, the other spherical geometry. And so then this was applied by different researchers. Bruce Cathy came in. He did a ton of research. He found cuboctahedral kind of systems. There's the star tetrahedron system, which seems to be based upon volcanic areas. And then this was all kind of developed and combined by various researchers, mainly Beth Hagens and her partner. And they were working actually at a university, and that they kind of got all their students working on it as well. So they had multiple brains working on it. And they came up eventually with what they first called the rings of Gaia, and then later called it the unified vector geometry projection, and this is the standard kind of Earth grid system we know about today. And Beth actually helped me a lot with my book, because she did a lot of the proper original research, and
Right.
and she was very helpful and wonderful in working with me on my book to make sure I got all the tiny little facts absolutely correct. And it sort of eventually came out in the book, and but she sees it more really as a kind of conceptual idea. She's not sure particularly if it's energy, such it might be. But you kind of can't help realizing that kind of everything is energy. So it probably is. And then you start noticing, if you look at the other planets in our local solar system, they have clearly they are showing, Platonic solid kind of geometry and Archimedean solid geometry. And you can see.
Doesn't Saturn have a hexagon on its pole or something like that?
Exactly. This is the kind of stuff that you
just
can't
sparked that off in my brain there. I think it was a National Geographic article I read.
Yeah, and it was all that was photographed in 1981. And this hexagon is bigger than 2 Earths. It's huge.
It's massive.
Yeah,
and it's quite a defined line, isn't it? It's not like
it's really strange, and
it's like somebody drew it with a pencil on it. It's like,
yeah, and I think there's certain moons in the solar system that look like they've just got faces of triangles over them, and things like this, and you have different things on different sort of planetary bodies, and even the sun as well. You have kind of activity at 19.47 degrees, which is the point of a tetrahedron, where they would touch like a small 3-sided pyramid, or that would touch the sphere, touch the edge of the sphere. But that has it on the north and south areas, so it would be a star tetrahedron, or different names given to that. And so you can go on and on and on with this, and you start realizing, well, actually, you get into the sound stuff with this, through cymatics and, probably some of the stuff you're into.
Yeah.
And you realize that sound frequencies, when vibrated within spheres, create these different geometries. Wow. It's just the nature of reality. It's just and it's part of many different secret traditions, which is now sort of coming forth. That everything's based upon these, and often it goes back to the sound, which is what you're studying at the moment. So,
I think this new esoteric science is waiting just to be like unveiled to us, Hugh. I really do see that, and I think it could be coming from the megalithic civilizations and deep antiquity. The origins of the Platonic solids really is a fascination to me, because I remember from my own mathematical engineering, we used to draw Metatron's cube, and for those that don't know, Metatron's cube incorporates all the Platonic solids, and it's fascinating to look at, because in that geometric diagram you can see all the 5 Platonic solids that you're talking about. But and I'm glad you brought up the Scottish stone balls. That these are weird objects.
Yes. That is kind of like hundreds of these have been found now, and so, in my book I only show a few of them. There's a lot more. They're beautifully carved. You can hold them in your hand. Some are made of granite, some basalt, some different types of rock.
Quite hard rocks, It
is very hard, and they've been carved into what appears to be the different Platonic solids, and even combinations of them. You have one that's got a cube and a octahedron on it. You've got one that's an icos, a dodecahedron.
Complex geometry we're talking about.
Yeah, and they seem to have been like teaching tools for the ancient people. They were found near stone circles all through Scotland. There's some have been found in Ireland, I believe.
Yeah.
And you can't deny these, really. These were like, it's part of a secret tradition, and these were thousands of years before Plato had ever come up with the idea of the Platonic solids, which were named after him, which they shouldn't be. It's named after the ancient Scots and Irish, really.
He robbed us. He did. He robbed us. No, but I do favour that they were teaching aids, But then you go, Well, it's the most obvious thing, but what they were teaching aids. But then you go, well, what the hell were they teaching? Like, you know, is there a lot of science there?
Well, I think this is part of it. I think the geometry. I think these were just, you know, these may have been something else. They might have been magical amulets and things like this. But they were kind of, if you look at them, you know, a good look at them. And I've seen lots and lots of photos. I've not had a chance to go and see any myself, but I hear there's some in Oxford, at the Ashmolean Museum.
Really?
Yeah, they're all over the museum in Glasgow, Edinburgh.
Going to be in Oxford very soon. I might just check that out. Where did you say that was?
Ashmolean Museum.
Ashmolean Museum in Oxford. I'm going to be down that way not too soon.
Okay, good. And it's definitely worth checking out. They may or may not be on display. It's worth ringing up first.
Yeah.
Fluctuate that. They've rebuilt it recently. Mm-hmm. But a good sample of them there. Be moved there. So, yeah, so they could have been teaching aids, but they're also... they could have been worked with. This is how they may have wanted to study the stars by, you know, because they knew the Earth was a sphere, obviously. And so the stars going across the sky were like a sphere, and they may have marked different areas of the sky with different sections of geometry and things like this. Then they may have applied that same principle to the Earth and then used that for surveying. But they would need to, you know, so they could have been like an initial stage of the teaching of this kind of stuff. And so, yeah, there's different perspectives on this. One of the things that Keith Critchlow did, who analysed these, who's a master geometer, he realised that when you combine them all, they create this beautiful kind of synchronised geometry within a sphere, which is exactly the same as Beth Hagen's Earth grid system.
Fascinating.
Comes out as the same thing, and this is odd because her system isn't necessarily based entirely on the Platonic solids. It goes into different things, including some of Buckminster Fuller's research.
Yeah.
So yeah, it becomes really interesting when you kind of get your head around all this, and it just shows you the level of sophistication we're kind of dealing with. You know, it really is quite staggering.
Yeah. I have to say, Hugh, you know, I'm glad I got you on the show and got your book, because it really has piqued my interest into this Earth grids, Earth mysteries. You know, it may be something only I fulfill my own interest with, like, you know, it might not be for writing or research, but it's just so fascinating. We haven't, while we're on the stone artifacts, I want to talk about Costa Rica and the stone spheres there, because I haven't got to the Central and South America research that you've done, like.
Sure. Yeah, well, the spheres in Costa Rica are quite different to the small ones we get.
Yeah, they're massive, like, you know.
They're huge. You do get small ones, but these are perfect spheres. Many of them. It's odd. It's like, it just happens to be in this bit of Costa Rica. There's hundreds of these massive perfect spheres carved out of granite, basalt, different types of rock. And you just really can't understand why on earth they were doing this. And I got interviewed about that for Ancient Aliens just recently, and they used some of my photos on there, funnily enough. And so they are just straight. They're all over the southern area of Costa Rica, around the Golfito area, Palma Sur, the whole kind of Diqui Delta kind of area. They've been researched by various people over the years, and it kind of compelled me. I believe there are some energy things going on with them, which I'm starting to look into now. How a perfect sphere can actually, if it's
contain energy, maybe contain it.
Yeah, it can actually pull it in and release it. But megaliths can do this as well, anyway. But there's some recent research on spheres, on glass spheres. They've been testing, and they've found that they've become like solar generators, and they can like hold even lunar light energy and solar energy in them as well. So I'm looking at sort of connections with that. But some of them are so perfectly cut that carved there. Seem randomly placed. Not many of them are in their original positions, but we found one area, one old ancient kind of farm, where about 6 of them were in their original position. So I took very accurate GPS readings of those and looked at the alignments and looked at what other people had said about the alignments, and there's a lot of energy there, I tell you. So whether they were like the kind of Costa Rican version of megaliths or pyramids to kind of harness the energy, these somehow did that. And I think they may have moved them along earth energy currents to kind of stimulate the energy of the telluric currents and things like this. Some of them are a bit too big for that. Some are like 8-10 feet wide, tall, and just sit there, and it's like they are just you sit there and you look at them, and you're like, what is going on?
Yeah.
Why? It's just like, it's like abstract art. It's like just abstract art in the landscape. You just don't, there's no way you can understand it. You just have to go and appreciate them almost.
Have you looked into the Bosnian? Because I know you've been on the Bosnian TV, and have you looked into the Bosnian spheres?
Yeah, I went to look at those a few years ago.
What do you think?
They're strange. They're odd. They're not as impressive and clearly ancient, handmade, carved ones as the Costa Rican ones. Obviously, they look kind of weirdly natural. They're kind of irregular shapes. Right. None of them I saw were perfectly spherical all the way around. But they were close. Some of them were pretty close. They're in this like ravine, this sort of valley. It's about maybe 80 miles from where the Visoko, where they found all these things there. So they're odd, they're strange. But I was there with a geologist and a team of people, and she was pretty convinced they were natural. But there's so many of them, and they're all in different parts of Bosnia, and there's definitely ancient stuff going on there. Sure. Whatever people think about the pyramids, I
was just going to ask you that next, Hugh, while we're there.
Yeah, whatever people think about them, these are really.
There's dubious reports. I know the late Philip Coppens. I'm so sad to hear about his death. But I know he favoured the Bosnian pyramids. But I've had Dr. Robert Schock on the show, and he doesn't. So
no, it's a strange one. I kind of almost don't want to talk about it because it's weird and controversial. But I went there a few years ago. I went there with David Hatcher-Childress, actually. He was part of our kind of team, and Klaus Donner and a few others. Sure. There was a conference we were involved with, and we researched all around the area. But it's strange. I mean, all this stuff he's discovered is like, they seem like they're ancient. They kind of seem like it's got some megaliths there. Yeah. They seem a bit like pyramids, and I could see why people would think that. But
Philip Coppens he was on the Joe Rogan Experience. Wouldn't be long before he departed, checked out early as well. But he was saying that Schock might actually change his mind or have another look at it, because he reckoned there was new stuff unearthed since Schock went there in the first place. But
possibly, I doubt that. I doubt he will. I think he's pretty kind of clear on it. You never know. But yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting thing. It's one of those things people really need to go and look at themselves, because me and David Childress and others, we by the time we left, we still weren't sure.
The jury's still out then.
We were like, oh, that's weird. Why are we not sure still? Surely it'll be clear. Yeah. But I'm not dissing it. I think it's a really interesting place. They're doing some good work there. I think Sam's a kind of total legend. I respect him and what he's up to. There's a lot of, there's other sites. If you go south, much further south in Bosnia, I think it's south, might be north. There's some major megalithic walls and constructions there, which are clearly there, and you can't deny that, and yet no one talks about them, and they're amazing. And there are other sites. I mean, just on the what the main hill, or the shaped hill pyramid in Visoko, at the top of that, the main, what Semir calls the Sun Pyramid, is an ancient medieval fortress was built upon it. But one of the weird things about the stuff there is that they've got lots of things that suggest it's an ancient kind of complex. They've got what looks like pyramids, or shaped hills, maybe, shaped into pyramids. They've got tunnels which aren't actually under the pyramids. They're about half a mile or a mile away. Right. They've got some strange sort of runic type carvings that have been discovered. There's what looks like megaliths. There's these stone spheres 80 miles away, and then there's definitely, and they found a Neolithic settlement maybe 20 miles away from there, so they know there's stuff going on there. Right. But I think it's worth checking out for people. Go and check it out. It's a beautiful place. They do. There's beautiful people there. I had a really nice time there. But there's a lot more sites around the world that need attention as well. I mean, there's lots of sites in Ukraine. There's sites literally everywhere.
In the Ukraine?
Ukraine has a lot of sites, yeah. They have huge serpentine earthworks, megalithic stones, chambers, things like that, dolmens. There's only two people I know in the world who talk about it. They spoke at our conference in 2008. I'd like to go there with them at some point and actually explore, because I was quite surprised. I said, whoa. Probably going to get them back to Megalithomania next year as to have an update, because it's so interesting. But you get stuff all over different parts of Eastern Europe and Russia. There's tons of dolmens with weird stone-cut doors on them, all in the Balkan region, going up into Russia.
Yeah, I hope to go to Armenia, to Karahunj. Have you ever been to Have you been to Karahunj?
No, I haven't been to Karahunj. We were supposed to be going there this year, but it's become a bit tricky. This tour we were organising, so we've let it go for this year. But I'd like to go there. I'm interested if a few people just fancy going, pay their own.
Sign me up, you.
Yeah. Just a few of us, if people fancy just a little megalithic expedition, I'd be up for that.
Yeah, it's something I wanted somebody to team up with me. Like, it's, I don't know, certain parts of the world, like, Armenia, Ukraine, and you don't want to be going on your own with your toolkit.
No, for sure. No, I've got contacts in both those countries now, so I'm working on doing. Because we were trying to do a tour, add that to our tour we're doing to Turkey and Lebanon in September, but it was just too tricky. You had to go via kind of Russia or like Dubai to get there, and it's the next country across. It's just they don't let you go through the border between Turkey and Armenia anymore, because they hate each other, and it's like really annoying. So you have to fly to the different continents so we couldn't really include it as part of the tour. But
it's not the easiest to get to, is it?
No, it's one of those things you do as like a little group of you, a bunch of megalithomaniacs, all with the same mission in mind. Do it like that.
It's just fascinating because the holes in the stones, and I'd like to get accurate. I actually have a copy of Paris M. Harouni, the Armenian physicist. I have a first edition. An Armenian guy sent it to me. From my YouTube channel. He just goes, "You seem to be knowing more about this archaeoastronomy than I do. Here's a book for you." And he sent it to me from Berlin. He's in now, but it's the book I have. There's just not enough detail in it, and I think it could. But I'd like to have a look at the angles of them stones and get proper GPS and wind the stars back and see what the hell's going on.
I mean, but they are saying it's dated to like 7,000. Something like that.
7,000 BC, yeah.
And so it's kind of contemporary almost. It's still a few thousand years behind with Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. Sure. So Catalhoyak and places like that. So, and it's not too far. It's like the next area across, really. And so it's a very ancient area, obviously. So the fact that it's like a stone circle, I find fascinating. A very similar stone circle, of similar magnitude, even bigger, I think. I think it's actually the biggest one in the world, is in Morocco.
Is that buried under the sand or partly buried in sand?
It's pretty much there now. You can pretty much see the whole thing. There's a big mound in the middle of it. Apparently it's the biggest stone circle in the world, bigger than Avebury, which is kind of big. And so I'm going to be going there as soon as I can. Just do a quick flight, probably from England or something. And I'm going to check that again. I mean, I'm thinking of like we should put our heads together and get little megalithic missions to different cool places. Whoever wants to do it, kind of thing.
Sure. I know some people that would just jump on the challenge. There's a big wave of people interested in this now.
Yeah, for sure. And we're finding that with all the events and tours and everything we put on. I think people have got a calling. They got a calling to see the ancient sites, because and they don't want to go on their own or just with a partner who doesn't like megaliths or something. They want to go with a bunch of people who are well into it. It kind of makes a different experience, doesn't it?
Sure. Yeah. We never touched on Peru. I wanted to talk to you about Peru, Hugh.
Sure.
What do you think of these Nazca lines and the landscape zodiacs, these effigies like?
Well, the Nazca lines and the effigies there are very interesting. They're very weird. They're dead straight, which fascinates me because that's the same as the ley line kind of principle.
Yeah.
And they go over great distances, even over mountains and hilltops and things like this. Sure. You also get the effigies which seem to have been put on there later. These are what some people think they may be astronomical kind of
zodiacs.
They could well be. Others say they're more kind of ceremonial routes, because they're like one line makes up the whole picture of whatever it is. So I find that quite interesting. And then you have people who question, well, why on earth do they do them? And I think that's one of the big questions. The more you research it, the more kind of strange and obscure it kind of gets. There's some of them are aligned to stars rising and sun and moon and things like this, different turnings of the year. Others just aren't. They just seem random. There's kind of underground water, which some people say they were marking water paths. Obviously, there's the early interpretation, where Eric von Daniken said they're flight paths of UFOs and things like this,
Sure.
which is, possible but unlikely as well. And I think it was more of a kind of reference to the gods. I think that it's just the way they like to work, that their canvas was the earth. They didn't have a limit on scale like we have today, where it has to be a certain size or anything. So I think they kind of worked in different ways. And Viracocha, the great sort of god of the ancients, was linked with the Nazca Lines, and some of the legends associate him with it. He actually did them as part of a kind of training or survey or something. So there's different theories on that, really.
Have you been to Marcahuasi in Peru?
No, I've never been to Marcahuasi. No, I was going to go there last year, but it's quite a trek. You have to go on horseback and things like that.
Yeah.
And I'm not convinced just by looking at the photos.
I watched the Robert Schoch documentary when he went there, so I think it's fascinating though. When you're
it's strange. It's one of those things, a bit like the Bosnian pyramids. Is it
it's
kind of
the jury's still out. Yeah.
So it's like one of those, but it's not for me. It's not a tradition, an exact ancient site, or a marker in the landscape or anything. So it hasn't quite called me yet. Maybe one day.
You talk about Peru, Cusco being the navel of the world and that, and you talked about these navels of the world. Why do you think this terminology is coming up, Hugh?
Well, I think it was about finding the centre of their land or of their culture. This is something this is about enchantment of the landscape as well. This is about kind of finding the dead centre, the exact centre. I mean, this was done in Ireland as well. This was done in England. The Isle of Man marks the centre of Britain, things like this, and there was actually a centre point that was actually marked there. So it's a global thing. I mean, Göbekli Tepe means centre of the world as well.
Yeah, the navel as well.
Easter Island has that as well. So I think it was part of their kind of culture. They would actually try and find the dead centre of their world, whatever that was. Not the world. I mean, I think Giza is the centre of the world as such. I think that was marked as such. Then all these other navels were kind of their own, connected with that, all linked in a kind of grid system. And so navel may have meant a grid point or a crossing point or something like that as well. But I think in Cusco, it's very interesting as you get straight line alignments going out deep into the landscape in many different directions from this particular spot at the Coricancha, which I believe you went to recently. Yeah,
it's an awesome place, and there's 3 holes in the side of the Coricancha, Hugh, and I was talking to a Quechua guy, and he was telling me that when the winds blow, now of course it's surrounded by other modern structures, but he says when the winds blow, they blew into these 3 cylindrical holes, but they're at different lengths, and they would have played like panpipes and would have been an acoustic vibrator to set the rooms off, because when you go inside the rooms, there's these niches that act like acoustic vibrators, so that if you talk into one niche, you can hear it in another. Okay. But it's like this 3 cylindrical holes drilled through the side of the Coricancha, which nobody can explain. But the Quechua guy told me that that was the acoustic signal for when the winds blows. When the winds blew, there was the change of season, because they only have 2 seasons there, and that was to signify the coming of the rains and the winds.
That's interesting. Yeah.
But that Coricancha's off the charts though.
It's very strange. Very strange.
Strangely carved niches.
Yeah.
Slots, grooves.
I don't understand it. I've been there several times, and I'm like, what? And the whole town is like that. All Cusco's like that, and up in the hills and everywhere. It's like, I'm like, this is just, it seems alien. It's not.
It's a foreign concept going on.
Yeah, and then you see all these elongated skulls there, which make you go, oh my God, who are these people? And then you realise the whole of Peru was covered in them. And I
hope to have Brian Forster on when he's finished in Egypt. I think he's just wrapping up in Egypt now.
I mean, they're there as well. I mean, I've been looking at this for years as well, and I was amazed how many there are in Peru, because I've found stuff in Peru that Brian didn't know about. He's found, he's finding it all the time because he lives there.
Yeah.
I found a load up north, just in this
village
museum in this place called Haraz, and which is near a place called Chavin de Junta, which is pretty amazing. And they were there. So the whole of like that, a whole part of South America was like, but you get them in Mexico, Honduras, even in North America, in Malta. There's some Africa, all over the place. So
sure.
It's pretty weird.
The Mercephali, is that what they called them in Malta, in that region? I think they called them the Mercephaloi or something like that.
Yeah, I mean,
the longheads.
You've been there recently, but I don't think they're on display, are they? Anymore?
No, they're not. They're not.
Yeah, and you can't really. They kind of disappeared because they couldn't be explained properly, which is a real pity, because they were, these were the megalith builders, probably. Yeah. So we have to kind of, we're asking why they were built, but who built them? And I think these are the possible, we've got the giants all over the world, really, mainly in North America, all over the world, and you have these longheads. And I recently found out that in Mexico, in a place called Sonora, up on the kind of western north coastal area, they found a bunch of these skulls about 6 months ago. But the thing is, there's reports there that some of these skulls and skeletons, they were giants as well. They were giants with long heads. It's like, oh my God. So there's suddenly in one area of Mexico, there's a connection, between what seems like the giant culture and the long heads. And some of the long heads are natural. They're not shaped. They are natural, and they will look like that. This was how this race of human looked like.
I think they were trying to mimic a race that was there.
Yeah, I think some are natural, and they were the original race, and some are the mimics, of the head binding and things like that.
But I know that wherever you find head binding, artificial cranial deformation is the technical term, or head binding, or wherever you find these weird elongated skulls, you usually find pyramid building. There's weird elongated skulls in the off the coast of Africa there. What do you call the islands?
Mauritius?
No, the other one, Tenerife.
Tenerife, okay.
The step pyramids there, they're like, they're not as glamorous as the other pyramids, but there's also elongated skulls there.
Wow.
Yeah, and you usually find the weird skulls alongside pyramid building, like, usually, like, I think most of the places where you find pyramids, you find weird misshapen skulls, like.
Yeah, it's definitely connections. I mean, you can't deny that I think they were involved in the construction. I think that's what people are coming around to now, that they were, genuinely, they were the builders, or they were the directors telling everyone else how to build, and teaching them. And you imagine having a skull like that, and, I think your third eye would be highly activated, and I think your brain power would be pretty impressive.
Sure.
And, it could have even been like telekinetic.
That's a very good point, Hugh, because people just think in terms of brain mass, but it's not just about brain. It could be a different brain structure. It could be a bigger third eye, No
one knows, because there's no brains left like that.
There's not a living entity there to look at.
Yeah, naturally kind of thing. Yeah. So yes, it's fascinating. I mean, the more you go to, we're going there obviously in October, November with Brian. We do an annual trip there. We're going to be kind of looking at. Because it's great. Brian lives there because he kind of makes discoveries, and we add them to the tour. It's really good.
Sure.
He's kind of got all the know-how. He's got all the local. His wife's local and knows all the people. So it's kind of really good. And Brian's become like a legendary figure. Yeah, I'm very impressed by Brian, and we work very well together.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I can't wait to get Brian on the show. And he's nice and pleasant. I was actually supposed to have him on the show, but I cancelled, and then he's gone to Egypt. And
yeah, sure.
But it's nice to see him over in Egypt, having a look over there too, because they got some weird skulls over there too as well, So
the thing with Egypt, that there's not many skulls left to examine.
Sure.
Unfortunately, it's usually just paintings or artwork. But I actually, when I was there, I was sort of doing a bit of research there, and I found what looked like an elongated skull in the main Cairo museum, and I photographed it. I'm not meant to. Maybe I didn't really photograph it in case they're listening.
I think they got their own. I think they got their own problems over there.
Yeah, probably. And I was like, wow, and I actually checked the date of it, and it was 1,000 years before Akhenaten's period. So it was like 2,000 BC probably.
Really?
And I tried to describe to Brian where it was, but I don't know if he found it. It was up on this high shelf. I had to sort of jump up a bit, and then I found this postcard in there of one of the queens. I can't remember which one it was, and it showed these two pictures on the postcard of these sort of mummies, and one of them had a bit of an elongated skull. And the picture below it was the same one, but they'd photoshopped so it didn't look elongated.
Really?
These are this one's no longer on display.
No way.
So they're the only two I've really seen. I've been to Egypt a few times. I've had a good look around, and I'm like Brian. I'm fascinated by the global connections between Peru and Egypt and other places.
Yeah,
and so,
I'm convinced the connections there too. I've been in Egypt a few times myself, and I remember one time I was looking at, I think it was in Karnak Temple. There's a relief there, and you can see clearly two different races of people. Yes. One's got this weird long head at the back, looks elongated, almost egg-shaped. Yeah. The skin color is slightly reddish, like a Native American Indian. The nose is aquiline, and the eyes are slanted, like, and they're clearly differently drawn to the Egyptians, like, and they're the ones giving offerings and stuff like that. They're clearly in a different social context too, like, Now,
I think it was multicultural, for sure. I think there's no doubt.
But the Egyptologists don't talk about multicultural, like, they don't talk about two types of Egyptians, like.
No, they don't. It's unfortunate. It's the same problem, really, everywhere you go. It's just same old thing. I mean, you go to Mexico, I did a ton of research there in the whole Olmec area, really, and all over, really. But there you can clearly see evidence in stone, in artwork, of multicultural area, without a doubt. You can't deny it. And some of them are Egyptian, some are Phoenician, some are from South America, some from Africa. It's there. And, in fact, trying to deny that is like trying to deny what's standing right in front of your face.
Yeah.
It's strange. But, yeah, it's just the way it is. It's just the way academia and,
And that kind of ties it back into this global theme we're talking about, that the Earth grid just isn't this scientific weird concept that's global. It's like there's other global stuff going on. There's like the ancient maps that you mentioned in the book. You've got mummification all around the world. And that's another thing. Everywhere you find either mummification, elongated skulls, or pyramids, you'll find 2 out of them 3 in all those places. You usually find 2 out of the 3. I couldn't remember what the third one was. It's mummification, elongated skulls, and pyramid building. Yeah. And sometimes all 3 that's a big anomaly that's not being addressed,
Yeah. You can't, it's just the nature of it, isn't it? There's too many good things, too many good things to explore still, from alternative perspective.
Yeah. How do you sit on the Atlantis theme, Hugh?
The Atlantis theme, I'm intrigued. Yeah. You can't help but, be aware of that in our line of work, I guess. I don't know if there was something in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. I kind of go along with Rand Flemath, maybe, if there was a place.
I quite like Rand's theory too, that, Atlantis is underneath Antarctica's ice sheet.
It makes sense. It's the only logical kind of explanation, really.
Yeah.
But there's theories, even around Lake Titicaca in Bolivia and Peru, Jim Allen's got a whole theory on that, and it's quite convincing, Andrew Collins got a very convincing theory about it in Cuba. And there's, and off the coast of the Bahamas, and Florida, the whole Bimini area, that's another one. And so I'm at a point where I'm kind of bored of questioning where it might be, but, like Graham Hancock clearly said, these are fingerprints of the gods all around the world. We can see fingerprints of Atlantis everywhere. And this is what we've been talking about today. Many of these things are so-called Atlantean, but I don't know. I think it kind of takes away the kind of sophistication of a global culture. Maybe the global culture was just called Atlantis. Maybe it was another name for the BBC or something. Who knows? It was just like, maybe it was that kind of thing. It was more of a kind of conceptual, kind of high level, kind of sophisticate group, rather than an actual landmass, which is what, maybe, Maybe, I don't know. It's difficult to know, but you can't help but, there are connections, and Plato wasn't like,
I think it's difficult because, if we listen to the academics, the mainstream, they tell us that 3000 BC wasn't interesting. Civilization popped up there, popped up there, popped up there, coincidentally all around the globe at the same time. But, maybe we got reconnected again, reignited again, maybe, who knows, but, I just know 3000 BC was a very different era than what's been made out, and you've got the likelihood that the great copper, the Great Lakes, the copper deposits in the Great Lakes probably fed the Bronze Age culture in Western Europe.
Yes. Yeah.
Because it's so accurately measured in metallurgical terms, that this copper is a certain grade and it couldn't be from anywhere else, you got the DNA samples of the cocaine mummies with the hair and the tobacco and I think the Egyptology standpoint is quote rudimentary contact with South America, whatever that means, but I think it's murky, it's murky, the 3000 BC line there, but it's different to what we're told,
Absolutely. I mean, this is just a problem, really. But I think, once people get out and see stuff for themselves, that's where the real revelation comes, I think, because number one, most sites I've been to, I thought I knew what it was going to be like when I went there. And
yeah.
Never anything like it. It's completely different.
Yeah. You have to get out and see this stuff, Hugh. You have to get out and see this.
And I didn't for a long time, but then I really got it. I've really been doing that in the last sort of decade, really. I've really been pushing myself to see the world, even though I hate flying, can't stand it. I'm just pushing myself. I'm like,
we definitely share that.
Yeah, and but you have to. You kind of have to face it and just do it and just see these things, and it's worth it. It really is. I mean, I'm fascinated. The whole world fascinates me. I could travel for the rest of my life probably, but I'm not sure if my girlfriend can handle it.
Sure. I'm glad to see you in North America and looking at the mounds over there, and Serpent Mound somewhere. It's on my list to go to. It's definitely it's a fascinating, and it's on the edge of a crater as well with iridium deposits.
It's a huge crater, yeah. It's where a massive meteor hit millions of years ago and created this whole mega valley crater thing. It's right on the edge of it, and it's very energetic, obviously, because
of the iridium,
there's magnetic. Because it went so deep when it hit, and parts of it went so deep, it kind of, lots of lava flow came up, and it brought up all these metals and different things,
which then solidified into magnets.
Yeah, and it's actually a gravitational anomaly as well as a magnetic anomaly there.
Fascinating.
So it's got this really powerful effect, and I can understand why they built a Serpent Mound there, because it's right on this bluff. There used to be a megalith right in the middle of Serpent Mound somewhere, or maybe in the head or the egg bit in his mouth, and it's now fallen down the side. Not many people know about this. Ross Hamilton and Jeffrey Wilson rediscovered this, and it looks like it used to be there, and that would have attracted lightning, and that would have had the same kind of energetic effects, because they have legends of the serpent and of the thunderbirds in that part of North America. So thunderbirds to do with the weather and controlling that, and the lightning and charging things. And you have the earth current, which is represented by the serpent, sort of combining with that. So yeah, there's a lot. If you're going to be a Serpent Mound, if people go there, there's hundreds of other sites to see in the area which are worth it. And they found there's a giant skeleton found at Serpent Mound, or one of the mounds just next to it.
Awesome. Totally awesome. Okay, what a conversation, yeah. It's fascinating. It's touched on so much stuff there. Give us your websites again there yourself, Hugh, and
sure.
And tell me about Megalithomania coming up very soon.
Yeah, we've got
and your guest list, I suppose.
Sure, yeah, we've got a few things coming up, but the main websites are just megalithomania.co.uk, and my website, which is sort of part of that site, is HughNewman.co.uk, and also the Conference for America has its own website. That's megalithamerica.com, one word, megalithamerica.com. And yeah, the conference coming up soon is the annual Glastonbury extravaganza. We've got Robert Schock coming over. Ross Hamilton's actually speaking there via Skype. And we've got a bunch of other people speaking. Paul Burley's coming from America. Ewan Mackay, who's like old school kind of academic who worked with Alexander Thom, and gets really annoyed by the academic response to archaeoastronomy, and he's going to give us his take on it. And we've got a bunch of other people very interested. Maria Wheatley's there as well, and we do a bunch of tours around it. We're doing a few tours. If people want to join us, we're doing an island tour. Maybe we should hook up with you while we're there.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
Yeah, right.
I'll probably be over in the UK.
Okay, funny that.
I'm never here half the time, like, but yeah, if you're there, definitely, sure. It'd be interesting.
Yeah, we're doing it around the main sort of megalith. We're starting in obviously, the old Boyne Valley area, then moving up to Sligo, then going south, and cutting and coming back up again. Going to, Skellig Michael as well, Carrow
nice.
Carrow Moor, and that's in August. We're doing that. We're just getting that ready now. We're going to Turkey and Baalbek in Lebanon. Göbekli
That's
Tepe
with Göbekli Tepe's with Andrew Collins. Is that
that's
right?
with Andrew Collins, yeah. And we're just about to confirm some very special guest, which I can't say until it's confirmed.
Right, interesting.
And that's gonna be an announcement very soon. Hopefully today or tomorrow. I'm actually checking my emails now to see if it's confirmed or not. But sure. I mean, this kind of surprised us as well. We were just going along with it, and then some very popular author said, "Yeah, I want to come." Oh, okay, all right, you're welcome. But we'll see. It's not confirmed yet. We're going to get that. That's from the 9th to the 20th of September. We then go over to America, and we're doing our Megalithomania conference in Quincy. It's not too far from Boston. Safe area, historic old town. And that's on the 5th, 6th of October. Then we do 3 days of tours. We've got Robert Schock for that as well, and John Anthony West, John Martineau, who's a master geometer. Also, John Martineau founded Megalithomania with me back in the day. And he's the publisher of all the wooden books. He writes a lot of them as well. And we've got Rob Roy, who's a stone circle builder, and Rennie Fleury, who does work on all the sites around New York State and Ninham State Park. We're doing a bunch of day tours from there. Then we go off late October, early November with Brian, and we're going with Glenn and Cameron Broughton to Peru and Bolivia, doing a sort of quite extensive sort of 3-part tour there. If people want to join us on that, it's going to be very intensive. We kind of give people their money's worth and get around to all the sites. Quite exciting adventure kind of thing. And then I'm going to hopefully have a break after that, but I've just but actually me and Andrew Collins have decided we're going to be putting something on in November, which we're going to announce soon. So people can wait and hear about that. That's going to be in London, just a one-dayer.
I love Andrew's work.
Andrew Collins is super.
I got to get him on the show. He's been on my list as well for a while. It's just I've had a few people contact me and they've jumped the queue. So, but
no, it's good. I mean, Andrew Collins he's got a book coming out early next year on Göbekli Tepe.
Has he?
It's awesome. The ultimate. It's going to be the ultimate kind of thing about it. Really, he's really done a lot of work on it. He's been writing about sites in that area since like the mid '90s, early '90s. So he's really got the whole kind of. He's got it down basically. Yeah. And he fits it into. I mean, if people haven't read already, they should read From the Ashes of Angels by Andrew Collins.
Sure.
Which is one of the most fascinating books I've ever read, I think. But yeah, so we do a lot of as Megalithomania, we do a lot of events and tours. We want to get out there. We're just into it. We're just we're really passionate about it, and we just want to kind of get people into it. And a lot of these sites, you kind of have to get special access to. So we work on that, make sure we can get access to sites that maybe aren't necessarily easily available to visit. Sure. And sometimes we get private access to various places. So yeah, it's all fun really. It's just it's just something we're all into.
That's what I like about the Megalithomania conference you do in Glastonbury, that you do also day trip tours and stuff around the events of the conference. It's not just a conference, it's essential.
It's essential. I mean, we won't do a conference unless we can do something, go out and see places. That's why Glastonbury's good for that, because you've got things in all different directions.
Yeah.
And the same with New England, we choose particular areas which are rich in the megalithic sites. So, because otherwise, conferences, you need a bit of action with it as well, really, to liven it up a bit.
Okay, yeah, we're going to wrap it up there. What a
Sure.
show. Absolutely awesome. Before I go, I got to ask you, because you're writing a new book at the moment about the Wandlebury complex in Cambridge in England.
Sure, yeah.
Give us a little bit about that, or a little synopsis if you can.
Well, just southeast of Cambridge is the Gogmagog Hills. There's many sites upon the hills. Wandlebury is the main big, great henge there. It's about 1,000 feet across. 300 meters across, huge. It's in part of an ancient network of sites in the whole area. There's sacred springs, there's even megaliths. There's an alignment called the Loxodrome that goes 21 miles south, connects up all these sites. There's Bartlow Mounds. They found giant skeletons up on the hills. And there's megaliths that I've been discovering, and legends and stories. And I grew up in the village at the base of the Gogmagog Hills, Cherry Hinton, quaint little village next to Cambridge. And my mum lives there still, so I go and visit her a lot, and I base myself there and research. And
Awesome.
I work with a local archaeologist called Michelle Bullivant. She's helping me with the archaeology side of things, getting me access to a lot of old records and things. And it's a book's worth of material there. It's amazing. It might take me a little while to get it done because I want to do it properly. I'm very busy, but I'm gonna hopefully have that out by the end of the summer if all goes to plan. And we do little tours there as well. We do like day trips. We can do longer. We haven't got anything officially organised yet, but people can check out wandlebury.com, WANDLEBURY.com. And they can check out some of the research. I put some of my research up on there. If people are interested, they can contact me, and we can take them out for day trips or 2 days to all the sites. There's a lot of stuff there when you get into it, and it's surprising because people don't think there is in that area. But yeah, there's a lot going on in this part of East Anglia.
It's so great to hear somebody so passionate and involved, you. It really is, like, you know, and as you say, a megalithomaniac. But yeah, so look, you know, get in touch, guys, and check out his websites. You know, it's been a pleasure having you on the show, Hugh, and you're going to come back hopefully after Megalithomania and let us know what's happened after the conference and any results. Yeah,
Sure thing.
Maybe do an update.
Yeah, absolutely. Love to do that. Yeah.
Okay, well, a pleasure having you on the show, Hugh. Thank you for your time.
Thanks a lot for having me on, James.
No worries.